What's good, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Goats of Growth. Please subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already. And like always, the J. David Group, which is my company, is sponsoring this episode. We help recruit today's go-to-market teams that will lead the next generation of unicorns. Email me, web@thejdavidgroup.com to learn more about how we can help. Don't forget, I'm working on a book called The Goats of Growth, which is why podcast name changed. The untold stories of the greatest revenue leaders of all time throughout the end of 2023. So follow me on LinkedIn if you can to learn more about that. Now, my guest today is Stephan Messer, who's a serial entrepreneur and the co-founder of Collective I, which provides the most comprehensive solution on the market for companies seeking to optimize revenue using AI, connections, and collaboration. Also, simply put, they're like the ways for sales. Stephan will explain how they work in a moment. Now, prior to Collective I, he co-founded Linkshare, an affiliate marketing service provider, which eventually sold to Rakuten for a cool $425 million. Stephan, welcome to the Goats of Growth.
I am so excited to be here, Jay. You know I'm a massive follower. This is a must-listen to podcast, and I'm so excited to be here with you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. So let's just start with ways for sales, right? Collective I. Tell me why one publication, I believe, called it the ways for sales.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal called us the ways for sales when they really are trying to understand our business model because it's a little bit different. So for you and your guests, you're probably used to software as a service and you've loved it, right? Software as a service is great. Take Salesforce or Dynamics or any of the products that people use. You're basically getting access to the software you need, the functionality, the workflows, and you don't have to host it. You don't even have to install it. You don't have to maintain it. You don't have to do security. It's pretty awesome. But it's also an anomaly, which is weird because if you think about all the tools you used in your personal life, they are not SaaS-like. They are more community models or network models. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Google Maps, Waze. I mean, you name it. Yeah, that they are not actually just software. They're getting more value. You and I, when we use these, get more value the more people who use them. And that's exactly the model for Collective I. If you think about it, sales, every time a sales professional, a manager, you name it, has to work with a new customer at a new account, it is like closing your eyes and feeling your way through the dark and trying to figure out what is going to work here. And every customer, we all know, is a little bit different. How much better would it be if we were able to learn from a person who sold to that customer before us? How much better would it be if we knew their patterns of how they bought or what they didn't do, their biases? And how great would it be if we were getting feedback on, are we doing a good job with this particular buyer so we could change things up if it's not working well? That at its core is Collective I, which is basically just short for collective intelligence.
All right. So begs the question, and that's a great example. So if you're able to get the intelligence from the sellers who have sold to a particular customer before, that's fantastic. My curiosity takes me to, well, how does that happen? And maybe this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but how is Collective I actually aggregating that information in a way that Waze aggregates, traffic data and all that kind of stuff?
Well, think about Waze, right? When you're using your phone, you download an app, and what that app is doing is taking advantage of connecting to things like your GPS, it's your accelerometer, all these other systems that are producing data passively. Mm-hmm. And what it does from that data then is it uses it into a big network to say, okay, I can see a car a mile ahead of you slowed from 55 miles an hour to 25, it's in traffic. And it starts thinking about, okay, what does that mean for the best or optimized route? And it might reroute you. That's a good example of where it's blindly using information. And the cool part about that is it requires a few things. One is passively collected data, because if you had to put into Waze how fast you were driving, what exit you just passed, et cetera, you'd probably drive off the road. It probably wouldn't be safe. Probably wouldn't be that accurate either because people forget what exit they passed or the name of it. Maybe they put it in wrong. All of a sudden, it's screwing up the network for everyone. The second thing is it has to be confidential, right? You're not putting in, you're not going to let this thing track you around. If all of a sudden some robber is going to find out you just left your house and you're an hour away, that's probably not going to make you feel good about using the application. And you want privacy to be safe and secure. And this new technology called deep learning is enabling both to take place overnight. The first one is we use deep learning to automatically capture how people actually sell their deals, right? So all you have to do is connect your email, your calendar, your phone, your video conference, your digital signature tools, your CRM, simply through that little OAuth, which you've all done, right? When you signed up for Instagram and said, hey, can I have access to your contacts? Yes, that's it. What happens behind the scene is in a very privacy, GDPR, CCPA, safe way, we're capturing all the interactions between anybody who's selling to the organization, so the seller, plus the lawyer and the finance group, all those people, with their buyers. So it's like that GPS where it's using that information to observe how are these deals taking place? Who's getting involved in these deals? What are they doing? How are they talking about this deal? What needs to get done? That helps us learn the buying pattern of every individual group of buyers. So when the next person comes up and sells to the exact same person, for them, it's their first time. For us, we've probably seen that buyer through multiple deals. And guess what? All buyers have a buying process. It's just unique to them. So for you, it seems like a one-off. I figured out how to close this deal. But it's the same thing every time for the buyer. They couldn't operate if they didn't operate this way. So by using these technologies, we're able to automatically keep the insights, but without disclosing anyone's private information. That's why you love using Waze. And that's why people love using Collective Eye. It's the same thing.
And for those of you who listen, I'll repeat it if I'm not sure if I had just said it, but this podcast isn't a advertisement, so to speak, for my guests or their companies. But in this case, I want to talk a lot about Collective Eye because it's something that, frankly, I'm trying to figure out. I know a lot of my customers are trying to figure out in terms of how do we actually use data? How do we break through the clutter? How do we personalize at scale so that we are maintaining humanity, so to speak, right, and humility while being effective, right? And we all want to get better, faster, and more efficient at everything that we're doing. And as I was preparing for this interview and learning more about Collective Eye, I just have a bunch of questions. So I think these questions will be helpful. Hopefully, this conversation will be helpful as we go through it. So just hang in there. So Stephen, the question I have, given what you just said, is there a common thread based on all of the intelligence and information that you're gathering? When I say common thread, meaning like as it pertains to behavior and buyer behavior now, as opposed to, I don't know, last year or the last 2 years and that type of stuff.
Look, I think I'm going to say something that everyone already feels, but won't talk about out loud, which is buyers are running from sellers. And I mean running. They don't want to be bombarded anymore. If you watch what's happened over the last 2 years, people basically got excited because of spam bots. You call it whatever you want, cadence tools, whatever you want. Like, I'm not here to whatever. Like, you want to use my get why, because we've historically judged sellers based on the number of activities that they do. So anything that gets more activities has got to be good. But I promise you, if you speak to RevOps people, they're not even paying attention to unsubscribe rates to these tools. They're just looking and saying, how many activities are going on? They're not paying attention to deliverability rates, which are all early warning signs that something is not working. And I say that because people who used to pick up the phone post-COVID are literally hiding. They don't go to webinars anymore. Look at the leads you're getting. They're all coming in with Yahoo Mail, Gmail. They're not using their company email anymore. Why? Because as soon as you put your email in, what happens to you? Well, what's a cadence to a seller and a selling group is spam to the recipient. And you know that because what happens when you get in your email? Delete, 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 delete. What the hell am I getting all this crap for? But when you send it, it must be great. Why? It's personalized. Oh, dear Stephen, that ain't personalization anymore. I would bet that most of your business you're getting today is not inbound anymore, but it's coming by people who've talked to someone else on dark social. It's come through someone saying, I heard this from another customer, or mostly they're trying to just take the stuff they already know and bring it forward because their fear is if I have to deal with another person. This is what's driving product-led growth. And make no mistake, product-led growth is designed to eliminate salespeople. And what they're saying is if salespeople aren't offering value anymore, why do we have them? Why don't we just create a product that someone can buy online? And I worry a lot about that because I actually do believe sales professionals are critical in the value proposition. Mm-hmm. I am here explaining something to someone who doesn't understand it. That's the job of bringing value to an organization. And I think without salespeople, we don't help transition new technologies. Like, for example, deep learning is this massively disruptive technology. What does massive disruption mean? It means your current logic, what makes sense to you, is wrong in the new paradigm. To take marketers, 20 years ago, brand marketers focused on the color of their brand. And then this teeny little company came out called Google, and they changed their logo every day on the website to get people to come back to wonder what it was. A rule that nobody would ever have done if you believed in brand marketing. But digital marketers looked at it a lot differently. And 3 years later, all the brand marketers were consultants. They were no longer CMOs. All the digital marketers had taken over. The logic that seemed so guaranteed, so sure, was so wrong that they couldn't make that leap and that transition. And I personally believe deep learning is going to offer all this younger group of sales professionals to become the new CROs because they'll make the digital leap faster than someone who's for 40 years has done things the same way. But someone's got to explain it. And that's how the future becomes today. And that's what I'm worried about with the sales professionals if they don't make that transition.
How are you doing it? In other words, how are you doing it collective eye, using all of the collective data, right? All of the collective intelligence to sell to your customers? That's the big question.
That is the big question. And look, what happens is if you learn how a buyer likes to buy, instead of using playbooks, you start to actually work with them. And when you start to get to know the way we see the world, we're trying to understand holistically what's going on. So take, for example, our sales team, and all of our customers do the same thing. I'll just use our sales team. Our sellers will tell you they start their morning by looking at their pipeline visualized. But the AI has looked at how yesterday affects their tomorrow, and it's updating the true odds of them winning deals. So what it's saying to them is, these deals you're under investing in, but the odds are better than you think. These deals you're over investing in because the odds aren't great, and they're either improving or declining. Now, declining doesn't say don't go after them, but it says the strategy you've used to go after them is not working. You can continue on that strategy, but your odds of winning this deal are very low, or change your strategy. It doesn't end there.
Of that? Can you give me an example of that? Like, give me like a real example of what like a strategic direction that you're going in where it's like, specifically, this is not the right direction, or this is the right direction. You just don't think it is the right direction right now.
So Jay, you and I both know there's the old saying that buyers lie. Mm-hmm. That buyer's like, we're going to do this deal. I'm excited to go forward. Sellers tasting the deal. This is great. But we know some buyers say that to everybody. They just can't say, I'm not interested. I don't know why. Maybe they just want to keep, learning about more. Maybe they like you. Whatever it is, they've said, I'm going to go forward. But they're not bringing people into the deal. They're not actually moving forward. They're canceling meetings. Have you ever felt these problems before? Right? And you're sitting there going, no. I know this deal is going to work because they told me they want to go forward. But the odds sees, because the AI has seen this buyer across multiple sellers, it's coming back being like, no, your odds are still 22%. And you're thinking, no, this has got to be 80, 90% because they told me they want this deal. And you're going to hang out there as a seller for weeks being like, I know this deal's happening. But if the AI is telling you 22%, you trust those odds. What happens now is they come back and they go, okay, this isn't working. 22%. I don't care if the person told it to me. What the AI does is it starts telling you other things like, did you know that you have these friends or family or someone in your company knows these other people that are senior at the org? That your manager knows someone who's over there. Not only do they know them really well. And it also tells you that they spoke to them 2 months ago. Now you're like, wait a second. Maybe my new strategy should be to reach above this person and say, hey, my sales guy has been talking to your person and they're really interested in going forward. All of a sudden, my strategy shifted, which is it's at a moment in time where I can actually go to someone senior because they told me we're going to go forward. I didn't do anything to go around them. And now all of a sudden we're starting to work the deal as opposed to rely on my champion. And that's sort of an example of all of a sudden, if you see you're getting 22% odds on a deal, that person said it, you're going to say the odds must be wrong. But what you're going to learn is just like Waze. When Waze tells you there's an accident ahead or Waze takes you down some weird alley, what you learn is trust the odds, trust the AI. It's always going to be right.
That's what I was going to ask next, but you just answered the question, which is, so not only does it tell you, okay, you have the chances of 22% here based on everything that we've seen across similar buyers, so to speak, and similar experiences, but it's also going to reroute you, so to speak. It's going to make it another route and say, hey, did you know, to your point, that the buyer or whoever it is that you're engaging knows such and such at your company? They had one conversation here or another. Does that extend perhaps outside of your company? In other words, let's say, for instance, that you have a LinkedIn connection in common that maybe you could reach out to help. Like, does it go that far?
Look, you can invite anyone to join for free, and it'll mine their connections. But we try not to use LinkedIn. And please, Reid Hoffman's a friend. He's spoken at Collective Eye's Upskill. We're great fans of theirs. There's a big difference between a connector and being connected. In Collective Eye, we use something called connectors. What connectors does is it actually looks at verifiable facts to see how well you actually know each other. Because you and I both know when you go to LinkedIn, we're all connected, but nobody knows anyone.
Right.
So the problem is you're not going to go through 50 people who randomly connected to someone to find that one person that might actually know them. But in Collective Eye, we rank them. We tell you which ones really know them. We tell you if they've done business in the past. So all of a sudden you can navigate, okay, I really have someone who can help me here, and I'm going to leverage them. And by the way, I might be able to help them with one of their problems as well, because Collective Eye will surface it so that quid pro quo relationship exists for you, ready to go, available for you at any moment.
So let me talk to you about the initial outreach then, because you talked about pipeline and opportunities and how to, wait, I guess, if you will, whether or not a deal is going to close or not. But what about initial outreach, which I think there's a lot of noise. We're all trying to figure out how to separate ourselves out of the clutter and get the buyer's attention, right? Or whoever the stakeholder is initially. How do you at Collective Eye go about doing that? How are your teams initially reaching out? What is the approach? What kind of information are they using? And is it just one-off, highly personalized information? But tell me about that.
Look, when you look at the deals that people win with high odds consistently, almost all of them come either through reference, referral, or warm introductions. The other thing is knowing when to go after them. So I'm going to use the exact same example. We do so much more, but I want to use the same example to understand how this concept of using deep learning creates this agile selling approach. I get this opportunity. My CDR says, hey, let's go after them. Or I get a list of accounts to go after. The first thing is the AI is going to observe all those accounts and tell you this deal's trending up. I wasn't even paying attention to that deal. I was just going to go through my deal, I don't know, alphabetically by size. Like we all have our approaches. But all of a sudden the AI says, hey, it's trending up. And in fact, this happened to one of our newest sales guys. And I think he actually wrote a little blog about it, which I'll send you afterwards so you can actually post and see it. He came because he was shocked. He was like, this deal that we had talked to 2 years ago is trending up. He decided, I'm just going to reach out and pick up a phone call and reach out to him. And sure enough, the guy goes, I remember you guys. We got distracted because of COVID, but I was really interested in what you're doing. 3 days later, phone call set up, whole team there, reinvigorated. He didn't have to figure out which deal was interested or would be in market. The AI is tracking today 5% of the globe's B2B. That's a huge amount of business. It's starting to see these things like we do things like sequencing and all this other cool stuff where we start to see when is someone likely to buy. And we're telling him. Now, the second thing is he knew somebody, but he was able to see how that last deal went, see that person was still at the org, see who else in the company knew that person, and was able to leverage that to say, I know that you were speaking with. Mm-hmm. You know, most CRMs, there's nothing in there. Mm-hmm. So you're calling up cold again. But the fact that he was able to say, I know exactly where it ended with you, meant he was able to pick up and remind the person of every discussion, even though he's completely new. He's been with us a month and a half. Mm-hmm. He was able to figure that out because the AI had captured all that information and let him see what was going on. Now, the last thing is he also was able to point out, hey, I see you're friends with one of our customers, because we connect to all of our customers so that we can say, go ask them what they think of us. Now imagine that as your first warm introduction call. Is it a, hey, what are you using for forecasting? Have you ever tried using AI? No. How about 26 seconds to tell you a little bit about what we do? No. It's a hard discussion that goes right to the meat of what he cared about, that pointed out that I'm already going to tell you, go talk to one of our customers about us. And by the way, let me get started. That's a completely different discussion. Here's where it came down to, Jay. Mm-hmm. And I want you to take a moment to think about this. Why is it that most people who are buyers are hiding in any way possible from sellers? From, like, we're trying to use cell phones now. Like, we're literally trying to hunt them. Like, I'm waiting for the Stalker app, which is, I will tell you when they arrive home, so you can stop by and say, hey, I brought you Shake Shack. Can I come in and talk to you for 26 seconds about what we do? That's the only thing missing. It's like Uber Eats has a warm intro service where they'll go to someone's house and stalk them. That's the only thing I think that hasn't come out yet. Think about that versus how much do companies pay to have a Bain, a BCG, a McKinsey come in and do a complete review of somebody's problems to then sell them their solution. Companies pay like $1 million to have Bain come in and say, here are all your problems, not to fix them, but just $1 million to say, I did an evaluation, I know your problems. Now, let me be clear. That salesperson is not coming back later on and saying, if I'm BCG, I think Bain's better at solving this problem. So they're paying a highly biased person to solve their problem. The difference is they're coming in with value. They're saying, I'm aware of this problem. I have solved this problem before. I now fully understand end-to-end why you've been having trouble figuring this problem out. I'm going to show it to you, and I'm ready to solve it with a solution, which is, by the way, what every seller does except for that front end of, I know you. Mm-hmm. I think that's where we have to change. And the approach I explained to my new salesperson is exactly that.
So how do you operationalize referrals and references, though, right? In other words, if most, sounds to me like what you're saying is that most, as you not sounds like you literally just said, that you have a higher probability of closing, of being engaging in a sales process if there's a reference or a referral, something like that, right? And in the case that the example that you just gave, that person happened to be at some point 2 years ago in conversation with Collective I. If it is dead cold, how do you warm that relationship up before the conversation started? In traditional marketing, that would be, you're doing demand gen, they're seeing your ad somewhere on social media or whatever. And by the time that you get to them, like, oh yeah, I know you because you've already won them up that way. But like, how is Collective I doing it from the beginning? Or how are you helping your customers do it using the deep intelligence?
Yeah. So the thing about deep learning that's so great is it's essentially always observing all the people that you're working with, or in my case, the connection. So when I gave the example of a product that we have called Connectors, which is just built into the product. And by the way, just so you know, because you're not selling, our core product for salespeople is free forever. There's nothing to sell, right? You can have all this stuff today at no cost. It only costs for the managers. So we're here. We are a believer in our community. We want our community to be successful. We know how hard it is for sales to have to go home every day and put food on the table based on what they kill. I have the most respect for salespeople. I built this company because I unbelievably know the risk and pain. I grew up in a family where we would have to talk every Friday about, will we have enough money for next week? We grew up in a small business. It wasn't easy. And I grew up, my dad died when I was 9. We grew up every week talking about, do we have enough money to put food on the table? So if you don't know why I built this company and why I built Linkshare, which was a commission-based sales platform for the B2C world, I know how hard it is and how stressful it is to wonder, am I going to be able to do a good job? So when we built this product, what we recognized is, instead of sending 60,000 emails and cadences and all this other crap, we knew that relationships are what this business has always been about. Since the dawn of time, trust, knowing that you'll be there for them if something goes wrong, knowing that you can help them solve a problem that they have not been able to solve. And when a buyer has an experience with a seller, it's magical when it works well. And they want other people to go to their friend. We just haven't enabled the mechanism for that. Connectors as a product is so valuable because when I reach out to somebody where the odds are higher, immediately it's saying to someone, please leverage your connection. And I think that's good for buyers. Right? I mentioned we're a community model. Like Waze, we want to help you as much as you help back. So for example, our people get free contacts. You don't have to pay for them ever. Why? Because we know you're not going to abuse them. You can't download them into a list format because we don't want you to spam them. But if I need to reach out to someone, I can. But I may want to go through someone that we have in common. And that means my buyer knows that they're helpful to me, which means I'm going to be helpful to them when they have a problem. They get a billing problem, they get a technical problem. They're not calling up client success. I want them to call me first so that I can make sure it's resolved. That kind of relationship disappeared over the last 15 years in sales. It became about how many contacts you have, became in terms of how do I bombard them wherever they are. But people are looking for that connection, that trust. And Jay, you built trust. That's what I think, like, look at your background. It tells me you are a family man I can trust. It makes me want to know you even more. That's the difference between someone who's in sales and someone who's hawking stuff. And our product is built for people who want to be professionals.
Let me ask you this question then. Is there a concern of, say, connection or connector overload, right? In other words, if I'm a connector, and because I feel like there can become a transactional element in that as well, right? Where it's you hope that there's a quid pro quo, so to speak. But if there's too many inbound or people coming in saying, hey, do you know this person? You know this person? Hey, I saw that you know this person and knew this person. Is that A, what it is? And B, if it is, what's the concern about that being sort of saturated?
Well, Jay, the fact that you're asking the question means you are doing what every great seller does, which is guarding their relationships. We don't treat salespeople like children by saying you can only do one here, one there. You have to build these relationships because if you burn the relationship, they are never going to help you again. And there is nobody who values relationships more than the sales profession. So look, if you're not providing value to someone and all you're doing is taking, I promise you, you will not be long for this world. But that quid pro quo that you talked about, the fact that we enable you finding out how you can help this other person, and the fact that even just the pay it forward model of, I'm going to do something good for you, but when I need you, I know you'll be there for me, is what makes business work. I think communities do well because they know that we're all here together. And we go under this very core philosophy. When we work together, we win together. I think that's the modern approach to selling. But if you're worried about burning them, it means you're worried that you've been cadencing them to death with bombardment, that you're not adding value. Can I give an example of things that a company does that's totally different? All right, you've watched the SaaS world for a long time, right? Masters of webinars. When's the last time a real person showed up at a webinar?
Wow. That's a good question. I don't know.
But they do it all the time, right? Because then they want to bombard it out. Look, here's the deal. You know what Collective I does? Every week we have an event called Forecast. It's tongue in cheek because we eliminated the need to do that physical forecast of polling people and crap, because the AI does it daily. It does it automatically and it does it more accurately. So it was a tongue chew. What could you do if you had a day back was the idea. One of the things that we do is we allow you to get 90 minutes with the most unbelievable people in the world to ask them about how did they become unbelievable? How do they do what they do? And it's people like Eric Schmidt, Nora Orbini, Kai-Fu Lee, Fei Lee, like some of the most amazing people in the world. We had Stephen Roche last night, who used to be Morgan Stanley's economist, helping explain to people what next year is going to be like so they can plan out their revenue for next year and what they think is going to happen. Right? We're having Mohammed Al Aryan coming. I mean, we had Peggy Johnson from Magic Leap coming. So you get 90 minutes with probably $1 trillion worth of market cap people, CEOs, et cetera, there, asking questions and answering so that we can learn together for free. Why? Why would a SaaS company do this? Well, we are about innovation. We know the leaders of the next world are going to be people who understand, is Magic Link and their augmented reality going to be something that in 2 years I'm going to use in sales? Or is it something that isn't going to happen? Well, if I'm not sure, why not ask the CEO of Magic League? When's the last time you've had the ability to have the CEO discussion for 90 minutes where you get to ask any question and get the answer? Not many people get that. And if you look at the list, and you can just go to ciforecast.com, you can see it's free. You're welcome to join. Any of your guests are welcome. But they can literally go every week and meet a who's who of the world. And that's something we're doing because we care about our community. Businesses are going to start realizing this. In the same way, I think you said, I need to guard this relationship. Am I adding value to our relationship? It's not a transactional deal anymore. It's a, we help each other. I have integrity. I'm going to protect this relationship for my life.
Something that sticks out for me, based on what you just said there and knowing what I know of you so far, is your ability to do exactly that, right? When you talk about all the great guests that you have on your forecast weekly, in my mind, I say, how? Right? In other words, how has he built these relationships? How has he built that trust for them to give 90 minutes of their time and answer questions from people that they don't even know? So how do you build relationships, and where does that foundation come from for you?
Look, we eat our own dog food. And most of these ideas came from the years I spent as a joint venture at my last company, Linkshare, with Mitsui. The Japanese believe that you hand your relationships down to your family. It's a small island. Everybody knows each other, right? In fact, if you've ever gone to Sakura in Japan, I recommend you do. If you haven't, you'll see an entire nation for 3 or 4 days sitting under cherry blossom trees because they all want to know each other, sharing sake, sharing their food, getting to know each other. Relationships matter. They are the lubricant or the grease that makes the change of the world happen. And I think for a long time, and especially during COVID, we realized or learned relationships matter a lot. Work from home means they matter even more. Hybrid work means they matter even more. And I think all these communications tools like Zoom, what we're using now, and Teams and all these other things, they're bringing us close together. But in many ways, we need to find commonality that brings us even closer together. Business is the most amazing way to bring people together. It creates an opportunity for us to do something great together. I look at you, I look at your audience, and I want to do even greater things together. At Linkshare, we've built this amazing community that has become companies like Honey and Ebates and all these. I mean, it is the core of e-commerce today. And all these people who lived in the middle of nowhere had this amazing opportunity to become great entrepreneurs. It's the same thing here. What can we do together to move this world forward? And I think that's the core of this business model, which is bombarding people is not a relationship. Treating people like their conversion rate is not a relationship. AI enables us at scale. And when I say AI, I'm always talking about deep learning, this new technology that makes a difference. It allows us at scale to find relationships we wouldn't have dreamed of before and do amazing things faster and be proud of it. I believe we only have a short amount of time on this great planet. And I want to make sure my life is meaningful in the way that I know every one of your audience members does. And I know you, Jay, you want to make your time here meaningful. So I don't want anything that slows it down. If our collective network at Collective I brings these great entrepreneurs together and uses the most powerful deep learning AI, what we can do in sales is transform this world in a way that I don't think any other function that can.
So I'm going to speak selfishly, I guess, for a moment. I want to scale this podcast and have, frankly, maybe do it even 5 days a week and have fantastic guests every day, Monday through Friday, right? And I would love to have, for instance, like, let's say, I don't know, who I'm drawing a blank on, the founder of Salesforce, Mark Benioff. Let's just say, right?
Yeah.
Let's have Mark Benioff on this podcast, right? Because he would be phenomenal, right? If you're me, how do you, because you've done this, right? You just mentioned Eric Schmidt and all the other folks that have been on your weekly forecast. How do I go about doing this? And like, people listening, same deal, right? They want to build these high level relationships as well. What's the process? Is there and I hate to say that word process when we're talking about relationships, but just where do you begin?
Look, at the end of this podcast, I'm going to help get you set up for free on intelligence.com. Anyone can do it, but I'm going to help you get set up. First thing you're going to do is you're going to search for Mark. You're going to find Mark's information, and you're going to start to see who knows Mark. And what you're going to know is that my co-founder and sister Heidi knows Mark really well. She'll probably talk to you about what is it you want to do. Because she's not going to make a warm introduction just by doing it, but you're going to know how well she knows him when she last spoke to them. She's going to know all this great information that's not going to freak you out because it's all anonymized. She controls the relationship. Mm-hmm. And she's going to say, I know that Jay is amazing. Let me put you in touch with him. Now, he may be having some problems right now because his co-CEO just left. The founder of Slack, Stuart, just also left the company. He may not be thinking this moment's the right time. And you know what? That's amazing. Because what that did was it saved you from sending a message that goes into a void that gets rejected. But Heidi might say, here's the deal. I'm in Palo Alto. I'm going to be seeing him in January. Let me see if I can make a warm introduction. That's the way business is done.
Amazing.
So to find someone using a connector where you know for a fact that she knows it, knows for a fact that she's in communication recently, and then to be able to have a discussion and that she knows that you know me, because she can see it right away. And she knows me well because we're brother and sister, means that she's probably going to reach out and say, how well do you know Jay? What can I do? Now, if you had an opportunity, you could convert them right into an opportunity in Collective Eye. And at that point, it's going to follow it all the way through, capture all the communications, help you manage it. It's going to tell you what's the odds of getting them on. It's not a bad way of operating.
So it sounds to me like what you're doing through Collective Eye, and I wrote this down, is you're like killing cold everything, right? Like killing cold email, you're killing cold calls. It's like there's no more, if you do this right, you have the right tools, and in this case, through Collective Eye, if you have the right tools, you should not need to reach out to somebody cold and with a lack of information. You should have the right information so that when you are sending your first message to them, it's familiar, right? You know them. You know specifically, again, not just their first name or what college they went to, or something maybe that they put randomly on social media, but something is really deep and specific to them. Now,
and if you've worked with them in the past, or your company has,
that's right.
And if your company's worked with them from prior companies, so you can find maybe that deal that's 6 years old, and you know that the information will be there because the AI captured it. And if you can find out that person that tried to do that deal is still somewhat connected in your network, and you can, it's the and where you spend the time to actually get to something meaningful.
Right. So then the next question becomes, because I talk about this a lot on the podcast, which is scaling, right? In other words, how do you go from one to many, right, as quickly as possible? And I feel like through these relationships, can you actually scale through relationship building and being deeply personal with every outreach that you have? Tell me about that. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Look, what have you learned about social networking? LinkedIn's today your most powerful tool, even though you can't use the connections for anything.
Right.
And so it got you further than you've ever gotten. It just didn't get you to the promised land. This social network scale, because of that, was it 7 degrees or 6 degrees of separation that Kevin Bacon has, right? Like these things matter. You can always get to the right person. It just has to be meaningful. And what's nice about the AI is it's not telling you go random, right? You've got your list of accounts. It's telling you where to look. Then it's helping you bring those people together so you can see, like we do something called deep collaboration, this thing called deal rooms. So it captures everybody touching that customer and all the people on the customer side you dealt with. So that helps you start circling around the right people, because maybe you can't get to the main person, but you can get to a secondary person or tertiary person. And it's going to help you navigate that. But it's going to do more than that. It's going to tell you, am I doing a good job? It's going to give you a feedback loop, right? If I do that call with Mark's team, by the next day, it's going to tell me what the odds are of that deal. I've never had that before. If it turns out the odds are low, I'm going to come up with a new approach. So it's literally giving you this daily feedback loop to tell you, of the person you're dealing with, are they responding well to the way you're working with them? And that may mean change.
So each day, just like Waze as an example, or each road you go down, it's literally changing and telling you, okay, yesterday it was 22%, today it's 27%, maybe it dropped down to 15%, and here's why, and here's what you need to do in order to change that.
Look, our sellers and our customer sellers are obsessed. They start off their day by looking what changed from yesterday because they're trying to figure out, did the call they do yesterday move the deal forward or not? And historically, they're either happy or they're sandbaggers because they had nothing else to go on. But if you have an AI that's looking at that buyer across multiple sellers, it's telling you for this person if it moved forward or not. And if it didn't, you're right away changing. It makes you start paying attention to the relationship, not what you want to believe the relationship is, but it's telling you how they're feeling, how happy they are. That's actually a buyer-centric approach. Like this concept of agile selling that we're pushing is about recognizing that playbooks are designed for the lowest common denominator. But we don't need to do that in sales. In the same way marketing didn't need to do that, right? Marketing is about one-to-one communications today. Why sales isn't? It's about playbooks. I don't know. That feels very 1980. Like, I want to be treated as me. I don't want to buy the way you want to sell to me. Right. And I have a right to treat that way because it's my deal if I want it. Yeah. If you don't believe me, I'll leave.
Yeah. Everybody's talking about customer-centric buying, right? And you mentioned PLG earlier, and then the sales-assisted PLG, if you will, right? Beyond that, which to your point, I think salespeople are really important there. But getting back to the point about scale, is there how do with all that said, and with all the ability of collective I as an example, right? And maybe people can find others, but how can you scale personalization? Or is it just you're saying you're not going to scale personalization, but you don't have to scale personalization if you're more effectively engaging with the people that you are engaging with, right? In other words, because you're getting more out of less. And as a result of getting more out of less, that's going to get you farther than trying to scale activities that aren't really effective anyways.
Look, marketers expect 1% conversion as a dream, right? Maybe 2% is a dream. So what you're really doing is you're just bombarding people to hell. This mass mentality of I'm going to do propaganda and convince people to buy my product. I'm sorry, that's not the way the world operates anymore, right? Instagram, TikTok is about authenticity, right? They're not trying to say, buy Coca-Cola because it improves your health, or smoking will get rid of asthma, because that's what propagandists did. Right. What they want is someone that they have belief in. I believe in you, Jay. Your audience believes in you. They know you're not going to waste their time. You have an authenticity that most people don't. That's what they're buying into. They're not buying into a white paper that you spent. Right? They're not buying into a Forrester report that someone paid for, because all that Forrester stuff is pure pay to play. Right. That's my opinion. I don't get in trouble from them, but I'm sorry. I've been on both sides of that deal, and I can tell you how many webinars I pay for has a direct response on where I go in their charts. So nobody believes them anymore. It's not authentic, but they're going to people they do believe in. They believe in you. I hope they believe in me, right? I really believe in them. That's why I'm building this stuff. Like, I use my own money. For people that know here, I didn't raise venture capital. So I believe in you that much. And I believe in ourselves that much that I didn't go to say, I'm just here to pump and dump this stock. No, I'm here for the long haul. Same thing with Linkshare. I was there for a long time building that business. And I didn't leave and walk away. For years later, I kept sending product specs because I was like, you guys need to do a better job. I believe in what I'm doing. You believe in what you're doing. You don't need to bombard people with low value propaganda. People trust people. That's why they're on these Slack channels. That's why they're on Discord channels, which is I need to trust the person on the other side. It's also why we get so upset when someone lets us down. If it turns out the only reason they did something was they got paid, I don't know, FTX. I can think of a few personalities there. Right. Although I give Larry David a pass because he said don't do it. But everyone else, those Tom Brady and everyone else, people were upset with them and are suing them because there is no authenticity.
Yeah. Let me ask you this about people, right? You talk about trust and authenticity and all that. When it comes to company building and team building, where does your sales team in particular fit into all this? And the reason I bring that up is because when you have a powerful tool like this and you enable people to be more effective and more efficient and all those things, does it reduce, I guess I'll use the word risk of relying so heavily on human intelligence, people, to be, 100% effective, right? I guess perfect, if you will. And I guess even more specifically, a lot of companies are looking for people who have domain expertise in their particular field because it reduces the risk of them hiring the wrong person or not knowing. So tell me about that in terms of your recruiting, coaching, and leading people within your own company.
Look, I think the hardest thing for us when we're talking about our sales organization to recruit are people who accept the odds and react to them. I think there are two types of sellers that are out there. There's a traditional seller and a digital seller. The traditional seller goes by their gut. They sit there and say things like, I know I'm going to get this deal. Don't worry about me. And that doesn't mean they're not great. I'm sure they're great. They can probably close deals and do a good job, but that's their skill in sense of convincing people. Then there's the digital seller. And the digital seller is looking at those odds every day to say, am I doing a good job for my partner? It's a very different thing to say, I can close this deal versus am I doing a good job? Because one is telling you if the buyer is reacting well to you. They're not trying to hit their target number. They're trying to say, I can hit my target number by improving the way I work with this customer. So if the odds are lower, the traditional seller is going to go, the odds are wrong. This stupid thing is broken. That's like saying Waze is wrong, right? You're out of your mind, right? But they're going to say it, and they're just going to try to hit their target, and it won't matter if the AI was right. 2 weeks later, the AI is going to be proven right, and they're going to be like, yeah, but that was for a different reason, right? They're just never going to accept that they can't see this. The beauty of deep learning and the beauty of a community-driven AI like Collective Eye, like Waze, is that when you get that insight, you're smart enough to react fast. If your Uber driver sees that Waze says there's an accident and goes straight, what are you thinking? What the heck is wrong with you? But if he's like, I know this road, I'm going to plow through and make it work. There's a different mentality. One looks at his feedback because I want to win, and coaching. They look and say, I can be better. The other says, you're criticizing me and my belief, and I'm going to go with my gut. So we have to find that digital seller. That's why I said I think there's this whole transition of this old mindset that's replaced or getting replaced by these new people who are just purely data-driven, who just want to win, and they want to do a good job. And I think that Oracle seller who shoved things down people's throat, who got it done because of threats or waiting till the end of the quarter and whatever, I think they're going away because nobody likes it. Look at what buyers are telling you. I think it's like 74% of buyers would rather not deal with the seller at all.
Wow.
That says like, holy crap, that's called end of industry.
Mm-hmm.
I think that new digital seller is like, we had a good call, but it didn't go well. Maybe I'm not talking to the right people. Let me call it. I'll give you an example of another seller in our team. The odds went down after a great call. He called the person up. He's like, look, my odds went down. He actually said it to them on the call. That's awesome. The guy was like, no, we're good. We're good. He's like, yeah, the odds went down. Something's up. And he's like, well, we did just get a new CFO. And the CFO has told us that he wants to change the buying approval process. All of a sudden, the deal that was supposed to close that week, he was like, oh my God. And we were like, how do we get to that CFO? Change the whole process. Now, it's fortunate for us, we had a connection to that CFO. We explained what we were doing, but we could have got caught up in no man's land. As you know what happens when a new CFO comes in, you've experienced it. Everything gets put on hold until 2 months or later when they've got their final process that they approve on and they're ready to go forward. We could have got caught in that. We were just the first phone call in that said, hey, welcome to you being the new CFO. Can we talk to you about what we're doing for your team and why I think it's worth going forward?
Right.
By the way, I will share with you something else about it.
Mm.
It's also why we changed our entire sales model.
Mm.
You know, in our sales model, you can sign up for Collective Eye for free forever.
For free forever. So how does that, where's the revenue comes from what then? What's your business model?
Yeah. So notice how there's a moment where you're like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
We're a pay-for-performance model. You can sign up for us. It takes 90 minutes to go live with us. 2 weeks later, it's usually when we release it because the AI is actually learning your business like a human's learning it. It's just doing it much faster. And so what happens is we come back in 2 weeks and we show you what's going on. And we do things like automating the forecast completely. We don't want a seller ever involved in it, right? I don't need their opinions. Like the goal is just use the data. Trust me. That's why we have the most accurate forecast in history. But we come in and show this and we say, hey, do you want to buy it? Now, if managers want to buy it, they could buy one license or no license. They have to pay. You know why? They're consumer. They want the data. They're not adding anything to the network. But every seller, let's say they say, I don't want to buy it, whatever reason. Everyone on their sales team, every one of their lawyers, their finance people, whoever's doing a deal can have that product for free forever. Free phone numbers and contacts, free connectors forever. You know why? They're contributing. So like you using Waze, everyone's getting the benefit of each other. We'll give it to them for free forever. If they never buy, we're okay.
So the more users you have, the more valuable and useful the data is, just like with Waze. The more people that are actually, more information it's aggregating, the more accurate, the better it's going to be. And you're only selling the licenses to the people, to your point, who are using the data, right? Because the CRMs and those kinds of tools are not for sellers. They're for people who are actually needing it to interpret it and to forecast and all that stuff. And is that
Think about that for a second, though.
Yeah.
CRM is for your managers.
Right.
Collective Eye is for you.
Right.
If the managers want it, they got to pay.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So, but with Collective Eye, same deal though, right? In other words, they're not, to your point, they're not, the managers aren't inputting the information, not contributing to the network, so to speak. They're only observing it to make decisions or to, whatever it is that they need to do.
They want to see a daily forecast and how yesterday changed their tomorrow. If they want to see if the inflation is going to affect their year revenue and they want it automated for them, if they want to be able to see into someone's pipeline to do a pipeline review in seconds instead of interviewing the seller, if they want that visibility, they're consuming the data. They're not adding anything back to you. They're not helping you.
Right.
So they've got to pay for the product. But the sales team, the person who's on the hook, who has to make that commission, we give it to them for free. When I say we believe that salespeople are the heart of this environment, of this country, and they live a tough life having to make deals happen, we give it to them for free because they deserve this stuff, not entering data so that their manager figures out what's going on and watches over them and decides if they're going to have a job.
Right.
Our goal is to make you more money and make you more successful in your career because you've got a family that's relying on you to do it every day.
Yeah. And just to bring it back to what we were talking about as it pertains to recruiting and the people, I heard you say, digital sellers, which to me is, I know I'm going to say data driven just to sort of simplify it, but data driven in a way where they are adapting to the data. They're actually using the data to be better. And then part of that, of course, is coachable, right? In other words, to actually look at the feedback that they're getting from the data and then adapting to change. And then to, like I heard you say it on a previous podcast, agile, right? Like agile selling, to be able to, what happened yesterday isn't necessarily what should be happening today. Let me just ask this question, because I know we're running out of time here and I feel like we could go on for a while, but everybody's looking at 2023 right now and planning their forecasting, right? They're saying, okay, if we these are the numbers that we think we can hit if we get these things right, so to speak. If we get these things right, that's our number, right? How does, in this example, you're forecasting in real time, right? How do you suggest people look out for the next 12 months and forecast that? Or are you saying that's silly, that shouldn't be done because you don't even have the information yet to do that?
So it's funny. I want to couch this answer to say, today, I am the only forecasting technology on the planet that will give you a 12-month forward look at exactly where your revenue is trending to.
Okay.
So when I say what I'm about to say, you're going to be like, that's weird. I'm the only one who does Bluebird predictions, 12 months out, every month of the year. I'm the only one probably with a 96 to 90% accuracy rate from the first day of the quarter to the end without a single salesperson having to input anything. So I'm about to say something to you that's going to seem weird, which is that nobody can predict the future ever.
Okay.
right? No one's ever done it. Don't try, right? What we're doing is telling you where you're trending to. This time last year, inflation was transitory. This time last year, the Ukraine was not going to survive even a week fight against Russia. This time last year, the stock market was at one of its highest points ever. If you were planning 2022, you were going in there with a wrong assumption. The only assumption you really should have is that change can happen, it can be massive, and you have to react fast. So what the AI does every day is it looks at not only at what's taking place with your deals yesterday, but it's using this global network to say what is happening in the macro environment. What is happening in an area? 2 weeks ago, if you were selling to the crypto world, you had high hopes of deals. FTX blew up in 3 days, close to $30 billion eviscerated. Well, those deals changed odds pretty fast. So what you're trying to do is say, okay, as new information comes in, how quickly can I react to it? It's like a high-speed trading situation, which is it's happened. How do I react as a company to what's happening to me? How do I do that? Well, the AI is going to reforecast immediately in a completely unbiased way. So if you're watching Fox News or MSNBC, you've got completely different views of the world. Everyone's arguing over opinion. This is taking the facts and feeding it to you. So it allows you to go to your leadership. It allows you to go to your board and say, look, the AI is telling me we're trending up, trending down. We're doing all these things, and here's how we can react to it. And the reason why I say that is the idea is not that the forecast is going to be accurate. It should be so reliable that you use the information to change what you were doing. Get off the highway when an accident's there. So if you see that the forecast is trending down, change what you're doing. Maybe hire different people, maybe market differently, maybe change the pricing of your product. You can change the trend by changing what you do if you don't like it. If you like it, do more of it. But to have that unbiased view that looks out ahead and tells you, this is what's likely to happen if you keep doing what you're doing. And it's non-biased. And it knows more because it's observing more than you could ever see. Mm-hmm. That's what Waze does. That's why we love Waze.
So as an example, something right now could be happening in Singapore, as an example, right? That I am not aware of because it's just impossible for me to be aware of everything that's happening, certainly in Singapore. And as a result of
Turkey. Right now, it's actually Turkey. It's taking place right now. If you watch what's happening in Turkey, you are seeing an unusual set of close rates, behaviors, and it's starting to spread through Eastern Europe.
Okay, so there you go, right? That's news to me, right? So when you talk about Turkey, let's say something's happening in Turkey right now, what you're saying is that the intelligence can actually look at that as maybe a potential threat that's going to affect what I'm doing here. And let's say if I'm looking at 2023 and predicting a certain amount of activity as far as hiring and all of those things, and I'm building my company and deciding, okay, well, then we need to hire X amount of people, or we need to invest in these certain tools in order to optimize what we're doing to prepare so that we can hit our numbers. That ability to forecast with collective eye says, hold on, Jay, like, this is happening over there. As a result of this happening over there, you might want to readjust your expectations and not spend as much on the first half of the year because you're going to need your money the second half of the year if this thing keeps going. Right. And then also
everyone's trying to figure out what the trend's going to be, right? Yeah. What should I hire up in which markets? Should I pull back? Right now, the answer is it's going to be a hard landing, a soft landing. Should we hire or fire? But that is a ridiculous approach to the world. Some markets are going to be expanding, even in a down market. But no one's paying attention to it because they're looking at this as if it's some giant macro. Mm-hmm. And that's not how the world operates. So what I need to make to optimize my number, to be able to go to a board, like I'll tell you this, when I used to teach at Columbia Business School, and when students would come to us when I started my career, and I'm getting up there. So when I started my career, it was early on. But when I started my career, students would come to me and say, I don't know what to do with my life. And we used to ask them one question: do you like math? And if they said no, we'd say go to marketing. Well, today marketing is all quant. Right. They'd say go to sales. And you know why that matters? Because boards don't respect people who come with their opinion. Boards respect people who come with data and facts. So when our sales leaders walk into a board meeting and say, the AI is showing this trend, it's like a Bloomberg terminal to them. They're like, oh my God. And when they're able to go down to region and deals and point out what the discussions are in the deals and say, we're seeing this trend take place and here's how we're reacting, they get budget. Today, it's that versus I believe I will hit this number. And when I don't, I get fired. Why? Because everyone had to trust you. It's like the Don Draper of sales. Why? How is it so good? I don't know. He's just good, which may make you feel good, except it's really dangerous. Mm. So when you're able to come in and say, look, the trend is this, and here's how we're reacting, people feel good. They're like, you're on top of things on a day-to-day basis. You understand the facts. You're able to actually go down to even the communications to see what they're talking about, to understand why they're doing it. But you didn't have to bring a salesperson in to say, let me tell you how I closed that deal because I'm so great. But by the way, everyone else isn't. That's how you end up with 25% turnover because no one's coaching.
Right.
They're basically they're basically doing like they're an agent for talent. Hey, my top seller's getting green M&Ms in their dressing room. And the two bad ones, I'm dumping them.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Amazing. Okay. Well, we're running out of time quickly here, and the whole story, the whole Rakuten story, or link shares selling to Rakuten is something that I think this audience would be fascinated by. I know I'd be fascinated by it, and also wanted to get into your own personal history a little bit in terms of how you grew up. So I'd love to have you back on at some point in the future, just to talk about those two things. If you'd be up for
you know, I am a huge fan of yours. I'm a huge fan of this podcast. You want me back? I'm back whenever you want me.
Awesome. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Well, let's get into the rapid fire 5 then before we go. I'll ask you just 5 simple questions. Give me the answers, and I'll get you out of here. Make sure that people know how to reach you. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
What motivates you?
Meaning, making sure my life has meaning before I pass.
Name a big goal that you have right now, and when would you like to accomplish it?
My goal is to get Collective Eye and intelligence.com to be the first place that people start their day. And I've got a while to go, but I'm on my way.
It also rhymed, by the way. What's your most preferred way to learn new information and to stay sharp?
Always from the community. Collective Eye stands for collective intelligence for a reason.
How many hours of sleep do you average per night?
I try to get 6 to 7 always. I find that when I used to push myself harder, I made bad decisions. So I prioritize sleep in me. All the sleep studies show that actually you'll live longer, you'll live happier, and you'll make better decisions.
What's your favorite thing to do when you aren't working?
Always kiteboarding. I'm obsessed with kiteboarding. It's not healthy.
I love it. So I have this new feature, relatively new anyways, probably for the last 4 or 5 episodes, where the previous guest asks the next guest a question. And so this question is, what drains you, and what drains you generally? What part of the day are you drained most?
Is it the part of the day or what drains me?
Let's stick with what drains you.
I think what drains me is when people try to justify something that's failed over and over again as them being uniquely able to do it. So in my example is there are some people out there who actually believe they're good at forecasting, even though no human being on the planet has ever predicted any future ever. And polling, which is what forecasting is not being done hasn't been done or used in politics since Truman beat Dewey. There's only 2 groups left that do polling, which are sales professionals, economists, and they both have the same success rate, which is abysmal. So that kind of stuff drives me nuts because it's an unwillingness to recognize that it's not a skill. It's just not what humans are good at. And that drives me crazy. It drains me every day.
All right. Well, I will definitely not forecast anything ever around you, because I do not want to drain you for sure, given that vigor. Your question that you want to ask the next person is what?
What would make your life have meaning if your kids were telling their grandkids?
Oh, great question. What would make your life have meaning if your kids were telling their grandkids? That is a great question. All right. Awesome. Can't wait to ask that. You guys got to tune into the next episode to hear the answer to that question. Stephan Messer, this has been awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you for being the guest on the Goats of Growth.
Jay, I can't thank you enough for having me here.
Oh, wait, sorry. Don't go anywhere yet. Tell me how people can get in touch with you to either thank you, follow up on some questions that I may not have asked, or become a member of Collective I.
Look, they can look at me up at LinkedIn. Of course, that's easy. They can come to intelligence.com and request an invite, and I'll make sure you get in. Or you can just write me an email at smesser@collectivei.com. The I is the letter I, not EYE. And you're welcome to give that email out. I have no problem with anyone reaching out to me anytime. And I hope that if you connect to me on intelligence.com, that I can help you get some more introductions. It'd be my pleasure to do it as a way to get to know each other.
Yes, the I is for intelligent. And remember that in the subject line or wherever it is that you're messaging him, put the Goats of Growth interview. That's personalization right there, because he knows that you've listened to this podcast and that you know more about him than probably other people who didn't listen to this podcast. Stephan Messer, thank you for joining the Goats of Growth. I am cueing the music. Goodbye, everybody.